At the family dinner, my daughter-in-law came up to me and whispered, "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, you bitter old hag." I laughed out loud and said, "Don't worry, dear." Weeks later, I gave her a surprise that changed everything. I will tell you what really happened. First, let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Your support means everything to us. If you like our stories, please click subscribe. Tell us which city you're watching from in the comments. We love hearing from you. Today we want to say hello to Rose Lowe from Texas. Thank you for watching our stories. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Margaret and I'm 68 years old. I've been married to my husband Robert for 45 wonderful years. We live in a cozy house with a big garden where Robert grows the most beautiful roses you've ever seen. Our son Tommy is 35 years old and works as a teacher at the local school. He's always been such a good boy, helping others and making us proud every single day. 3 years ago, Tommy married a woman named Crystal. She's 26 years old with long red hair and bright blue eyes that seem to see everything. From the very first day I met her, something felt wrong. She would smile at me, but her eyes stayed cold like winter ice. She talked sweetly, but I could hear something mean hiding behind her words. Crystal always wanted expensive things and complained when she didn't get them. Last month, we planned a special family dinner to celebrate Tommy's birthday. I spent all day cooking his favorite foods: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and chocolate cake with vanilla frosting. The dining room looked perfect with my best plates and flowers from Robert's garden. When they arrived, Crystal wore a fancy dress that probably cost more than my grocery money for a whole month. She kept touching her stomach and smiling in a way that made me feel uncomfortable. During dinner, she barely ate anything and kept staring at Robert with strange looks. Tommy was so happy, talking about his students and sharing funny stories from school. Robert seemed nervous, which was odd because he's usually so relaxed during family dinners. He kept looking at his plate and wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just said he was tired from working in the garden. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. Crystal suddenly stood up and said she had big news to share with everyone. Tommy's face lit up with excitement as she announced that she was going to have a baby. He jumped up and hugged her so tight, spinning her around the dining room while laughing with pure joy. I should have been thrilled to become a grandmother, but something in Crystal's eyes made me feel scared instead of happy. She was watching Robert's face very carefully, like she was waiting for some kind of reaction from him. When Tommy put her down, he ran over to hug me and Robert, saying we were going to be the best grandparents in the whole world. His happiness was so real and pure that it made my heart feel warm and sad at the same time. After we finished eating dessert and Tommy was washing dishes in the kitchen, Crystal walked over to where I was sitting. She leaned down close to my ear like she wanted to tell me a secret. What she whispered made my blood turn cold and my hands start shaking. "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, you bitter old hag," she hissed so quietly that only I could hear. The words hit me like a slap across the face, but something inside me refused to believe it. Instead of crying or getting angry, I started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because I knew in my heart that my Robert would never ever do such a terrible thing to our family. "Don't worry, dear," I said back to her, keeping my voice calm and steady. "Everything will work out just fine." Crystal looked confused because she expected me to scream or cry or make a big scene. She wanted drama and tears, but I gave her nothing but a gentle smile. I could see the anger flash in her blue eyes because her mean plan wasn't working the way she wanted it to. When Tommy came back from the kitchen, he found us both smiling, and he looked so happy that his wife and mother were getting along well. He had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. After they left that night, I sat Robert down at our kitchen table and asked him to tell me the truth about what was happening. His face went white as a sheet, and his hands started trembling just like mine had earlier. "Margaret," he said in a voice so quiet I could barely hear him, "I swear on my mother's grave that I have never touched that woman. But she's been threatening me for months, saying she'll tell Tommy that I tried to kiss her if I don't give her money." My heart broke for my poor husband who had been carrying this terrible secret all by himself. Robert told me that Crystal had been coming to our house when I was at my book club meetings, asking for help with marriage problems. She would cry fake tears and say that Tommy wasn't giving her enough attention or money. Then she started asking Robert for cash, saying she needed it for emergency doctor visits that Tommy didn't know about. When Robert said no, she threatened to lie to Tommy and say that Robert had been inappropriate with her. She knew that even a false accusation would destroy our family and Robert's reputation in our small town. My poor husband had been giving her money just to keep her quiet and protect our son from heartbreak. "How much money have you given her?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. Robert hung his head in shame and whispered, "Almost $10,000 from our savings account." $10,000. That was money we had saved for years, planning to use it for a special trip to visit the places we dreamed about when we were young. But Robert had given it all away to protect our family from Crystal's evil lies. I reached across the table and took his shaking hands in mine. "We're going to fix this," I told him firmly. "But we need to be very careful and very smart about how we do it." That night, I lay awake thinking about Crystal's claim that she was pregnant with Robert's baby. If she was really going to try to destroy our family with this lie, she would need some kind of proof to make people believe her. In today's world, everyone knows about DNA tests that can prove who a baby's real father is. If Crystal was smart enough to blackmail my husband, she was probably smart enough to have a backup plan for her lies. The next morning, I called my sister Helen, who works at the hospital downtown. Helen has always been good at finding out information, and I needed her help to solve this puzzle. "Helen," I said when she answered the phone, "I need you to do me a huge favor, but you can't ask me any questions about why." Helen laughed and said, "Margaret, we've been sisters for 68 years. Of course I'll help you with whatever you need." I asked her to find out if Crystal had been to any doctors in town for pregnancy tests or appointments. Helen said she would check around quietly and call me back later. While I waited for Helen's call, I decided to do some detective work of my own. I remembered that Crystal always carried a big purse everywhere she went, and she was very protective of it. When Helen called me back that afternoon, she had interesting news. "Margaret," she said, "I checked with all the doctors and clinics in town. Crystal hasn't been to any of them for pregnancy care. In fact, one of the nurses said she saw Crystal buying a pregnancy test at the pharmacy last week, but she was with a man who definitely wasn't Tommy." My heart started beating faster as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. "What did this man look like?" I asked. Helen described a tall, thin man with dark hair and a beard, someone I'd never heard of before. This was getting more mysterious by the minute. I spent the next few days watching Crystal very carefully whenever she came to visit. She would touch her stomach and talk about being tired, but something about her behavior seemed fake, like she was acting in a play. Real pregnant women have a certain glow and way of moving that Crystal just didn't have. When I mentioned specific things about pregnancy that I remembered from when I was expecting Tommy, Crystal would change the subject quickly or give answers that didn't make sense. She also avoided certain foods that pregnant women usually can't eat, but not in the right way. It was like she had studied pregnancy symptoms from a book but didn't really understand them. One afternoon, Crystal left her big purse on our kitchen counter while she went to the bathroom. I knew it was wrong to look through someone else's things, but I also knew that my family's happiness was at stake. Inside her purse, I found something that made my hands shake with anger. There were 3 positive pregnancy tests, but they all had different dates written on them in Crystal's handwriting. The dates went back 4 months, which didn't match when she said she got pregnant. There was also a small notebook with strange notes about pregnancy symptoms and what to say to doctors. But the most shocking thing I found was a letter from a medical clinic in the next town over. The letter was addressed to Crystal, and it talked about a procedure she had scheduled for the following week. I didn't understand all the medical words, but I knew enough to realize that this wasn't about being pregnant. It was about not being pregnant anymore. Crystal was planning to end a pregnancy that might not even be real, and somehow use this to hurt my family even more. I quickly took pictures of everything with my phone and put her purse back exactly where she had left it. When Crystal came back from the bathroom, she looked at me suspiciously, like she could tell that something had changed. "Is everything okay, Margaret?" she asked, her voice sweet but her eyes cold and mean. "Everything's perfect, dear," I replied with my biggest smile. I was just thinking about how wonderful it will be to have a baby in the family again. But inside I was planning my next move very carefully. I knew that Crystal was playing a dangerous game, and if I wasn't smart about stopping her, she could destroy Tommy's life and break Robert's heart forever. That evening, I called Tommy and asked him to come over for coffee the next day without Crystal. "I want to hear all about your teaching job," I told him, which wasn't a lie because I did want to spend time with my son. When Tommy arrived the next afternoon, he looked tired and worried about something. "Mom," he said as we sat in the garden with our coffee, "can I tell you something that's been bothering me?" My heart jumped because I wondered if he was starting to figure out that something was wrong with Crystal's story. "Of course, sweetheart. You can tell me anything." Tommy looked around to make sure no one could hear us, then said quietly, "Crystal has been acting strange lately. She says she's pregnant, but she won't let me come to any doctor appointments with her. When I ask questions about the baby, she gets angry and says I don't trust her. Last night I found birth control pills hidden in her jewelry box, but when I asked her about them, she said they were old ones from before we got married." I could see the confusion and pain in my son's eyes as he tried to understand what was happening in his marriage. This was my chance to help him see the truth. "Tommy," I said gently, "what would you say if I told you that I don't think Crystal is really pregnant?" His eyes got wide with surprise, and he stared at me like I had said something crazy. "What do you mean, Mom?" She took a pregnancy test right in front of me. It was positive. I pulled out my phone and showed him the pictures I had taken of the pregnancy tests in Crystal's purse. "Look at these dates, son. They don't match up with when she says she got pregnant. And look at this letter from the medical clinic." As Tommy read everything, his face went from confusion to understanding to deep sadness. "I don't understand," Tommy said, his voice cracking like it did when he was a little boy and got hurt. "Why would Crystal lie about something so important? Why would she pretend to be pregnant if she's not?" I took his hands in mine and looked straight into his eyes, the same brown eyes he'd had since he was born. "Because she's been blackmailing your father, threatening to lie about him if he doesn't give her money. She probably thought that claiming to be pregnant with his baby would be the ultimate way to destroy our family and get whatever she wants from us." Tommy's face went through so many emotions: anger, hurt, disappointment, and finally determination. "We have to stop her, Mom. We can't let her hurt Dad or break up our family with these horrible lies." I was so proud of my son in that moment. Even though his heart was breaking because his wife had betrayed him, he was more worried about protecting his family than feeling sorry for himself. "I have a plan," I told him, "but we need to be very careful. Crystal is smart and dangerous, and if we make one mistake, she could still find a way to hurt all of us." We spent the next hour planning exactly what we would do. The next day was Saturday, and Crystal was supposed to come over for lunch like she did every weekend. But this time, things would be different. Tommy arrived early and hid in Robert's workshop where he could hear everything but Crystal couldn't see him. Robert was so nervous that his hands were shaking as he helped me set the table. "Are you sure this will work, Margaret?" he asked for the 10th time. "Trust me," I said, squeezing his shoulder. "By the end of today, Crystal will never be able to hurt our family again." When Crystal's car pulled into the driveway, I took a deep breath and prepared for the performance of my life. Crystal came into the house wearing another expensive dress and acting like the perfect daughter-in-law. "Margaret, Robert, how wonderful to see you both," she said with her fake sweet smile. We sat down for lunch, and I waited for the right moment to spring my trap. "Crystal, dear," I said as I passed her the salad, "I've been thinking about what you told me at Tommy's birthday dinner." Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth, and I could see her body tense up like a cat ready to run. "What do you mean?" she asked, but her voice wasn't sweet anymore. It was sharp and worried. "About being pregnant with Robert's baby," I said calmly, like I was talking about the weather. "I've been wondering how we should handle this situation." Crystal looked at Robert, who was staring at his plate and trying not to show how nervous he was. She probably thought he had told me everything and that I was going to help her get more money or something. Well, she said carefully, these things are complicated. Robert and I didn't mean for it to happen, but sometimes these things just occur. I nodded like I understood completely, even though inside I was disgusted by her lies. Of course, I said. But I think we need to be practical about this. If you're really having Robert's baby, we'll need proof for when Tommy finds out. You know how men are. They always want to see evidence before they believe anything. Crystal's eyes got narrow and suspicious. She wasn't sure where I was going with this conversation. What kind of proof? She asked slowly. I smiled my sweetest grandmother smile and said, well, a DNA test, of course. Once the baby is born, we can prove that Robert is the father. That way, Tommy will have to accept the truth and we can all figure out what to do next. Crystal's face went white as a sheet. She started stuttering and stumbling over her words. A DNA test. But that's not necessary. Everyone will just believe us when they see the baby. I shook my head and scared like a disappointed teacher. Oh no, dear. These days everyone knows about DNA tests. If we don't have scientific proof, people will think we're making the whole thing up. Tommy might even think you're lying about the pregnancy altogether. The word lying hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode, and I could see Crystal's mind racing to figure out how to escape from the trap I had set for her. Actually, I continued, pulling out my phone, I've already made an appointment for you at the clinic downtown. They can do a DNA test right now using a simple blood sample from you and Robert. It's completely safe, and the results will be ready in just a few days. Crystal jumped up from her chair so fast that she knocked over her water glass. No, that's not necessary. I don't want to do any tests right now. It might hurt the baby. But I was ready for this excuse too. Don't worry, dear. I already talked to the doctor and she said these tests are perfectly safe for pregnant women. In fact, she was surprised that we hadn't done one already. Crystal started backing toward the door. Her fake sweet mask completely gone now. I don't have time for this today. I have other plans. But before she could reach the door, Tommy stepped out of his hiding place in the workshop. The look on Crystal's face when she saw her husband was like watching a mouse realize it's trapped by a cat. Hello, wife, Tommy said. His voice cold and hard in a way I'd never heard before. I think you do have time for this conversation. Crystal's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no words came out. She knew she had been caught. Sit down, Crystal, Tommy said, pointing to her chair. We're going to talk about your pregnancy and your blackmail and all the money you've stolen from my parents. Crystal collapsed into the chair like all the air had gone out of her body. The confident, manipulative woman who had been terrorizing our family was suddenly just a scared, cornered liar who knew her game was over. Tommy, I can explain everything, she started, but he held up his hand to stop her. No more lies, he said firmly. Mom showed me the pregnancy tests with the wrong dates. I know about the birth control pills. I know about the clinic appointment. Crystal looked around the room like a trapped animal, searching for any way to escape or turn the situation back in her favor. You don't understand, she said desperately. Your father did try to touch me. He's been making advances for months. The pregnancy might not be his, but he still tried to dash. Stop, Tommy interrupted, his voice like thunder. Just stop lying. We know about the man Helen saw you with at the pharmacy. We know you're not really pregnant. We know you've been blackmailing Dad for money. The only question now is whether we call the police or give you a chance to leave quietly. The silence in the room was deafening. Crystal sat there for what felt like hours, though it was probably only a few minutes. I could see her mind working, trying to find one last lie or manipulation that might save her. But there was nothing left. Her web of deception had completely fallen apart. Finally, she looked up at Tommy with tears in her eyes. And for the first time since I'd known her, these tears looked real. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for things to go this far. I needed money and I thought your family had so much. I thought I could take a little and no one would get hurt. A little. Robert spoke up for the first time, his voice shaking with anger. You took $10,000 from us. You threatened to destroy my reputation and my marriage. You made me lie to my wife for months. Crystal flinched like he had slapped her. I know it was wrong, but I was desperate. I owe money to some very bad people, and I didn't know what else to do. Tommy shook his head in disgust. So you decided to destroy my family to solve your problems? Do you have any idea what you've put us through? Do you care at all about the people you've hurt? Crystal couldn't look any of us in the eye. She just sat there crying and mumbling apologies that sounded hollow and meaningless after everything she had done. I felt some pity for her, but not much. She had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. Here's what's going to happen, I said in my sternest grandmother voice. You're going to pack your things and move out of Tommy's house today. You're going to pay back every penny you stole from us, even if it takes you years. And you're never going to contact any member of this family again. If you do, we'll go straight to the police with all the evidence we have. Crystal nodded frantically, desperate to avoid going to jail. Yes, I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't call the police. Tommy pulled out his wallet and threw a $20 bill on the table. That's enough money for gas to get wherever you're going. Don't you ever ask this family for another cent. Crystal grabbed the money like her life depended on it. What about my things? All my clothes and jewelry are at the house. Tommy's face was like stone. You can take one suitcase of clothes. Everything else stays. Consider it partial payment for what you've stolen from us. As Crystal stood up to leave, she turned back one more time with a desperate look in her eyes. Tommy, I know you hate me now, but there was a time when you loved me. Can't we try to work this out? Can't we go to counseling or something? My son looked at his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, with the saddest expression I've ever seen on his face. Crystal, he said quietly, I did love you. I loved you enough to give you everything I had, to trust you completely, to plan a whole future with you. But the woman I loved never existed, did she? She was just another one of your lies. Crystal's face crumpled, and she ran out of the house without another word. We heard her car start up and drive away, and then the house was quiet except for the sound of our own breathing. Tommy sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. I can't believe I was so stupid, he said. How did I not see what she was really like? Robert put his hand on our son's shoulder. Son, when you love someone you want to believe the best about them. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you a good person. Crystal took advantage of your trust, but that's her failure, not yours. I sat down next to Tommy and rubbed his back like I used to when he was little and got hurt at school. The important thing, I said, is that we caught her before she could do any more damage. Our family is safe now, and that's what matters most. Tommy looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry that I brought her into our lives. I'm sorry she hurt you and Dad. I'm sorry I didn't see through her lies sooner. I hugged my son tight and felt grateful that we had been able to save him from a lifetime of misery with that awful woman. You have nothing to apologize for, I told him. We're just glad you're free now. Over the next few weeks, Tommy started the process of getting divorced from Crystal. She didn't fight it because she knew we could send her to jail if she caused any more trouble. She also started paying us back in small amounts. $20 here, $50 there. It would take her years to pay back everything she stole, but at least she was trying. Tommy threw himself into his work at the school and started seeing a counselor to help him deal with the betrayal and learn how to trust again. Robert and I grew closer than ever, grateful that our marriage had survived Crystal's attempts to destroy it. 6 months later I got a phone call that surprised me. It was Crystal, and she sounded different, tired, but more honest than I'd ever heard her before. Margaret, she said, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm getting help. I'm in therapy and I'm working 2 jobs to pay you back faster. I also wanted to say that I'm truly sorry for what I did to your family. There's no excuse for it. I listened quietly, not sure what to say. Part of me was still angry, But part of me was glad that she seemed to be trying to become a better person. I appreciate you calling, I told her. I hope you can find a way to make an honest life for yourself. After I hung up, I thought about forgiveness and second chances. Crystal had done terrible things to us, but she was still a human being who deserved a chance to change. I didn't know if she would succeed in becoming a better person, but I hoped she would. A year later, Tommy met a wonderful woman named Sarah who teaches at the same school he does. She's kind and honest and makes him laugh in a way that lights up his whole face. When he brought her home to meet us, I could see immediately that this was real love, not the fake kind that Crystal had offered. Sarah and Tommy got married in our backyard garden, surrounded by Robert's beautiful roses and all the people who truly loved them. It was a small, simple wedding, but it was filled with genuine joy and happiness. As I watched my son dance with his new wife, I felt grateful for everything we had been through. The pain and fear and anger had been terrible, but they had also shown us how strong our family really was. We had faced Crystal's lies and manipulation together, and we had come out stronger on the other side. 2 years after that awful family dinner, Sarah gave birth to our first real grandchild, a beautiful baby girl named Emma who has Tommy's brown eyes and Sarah's sweet smile. When I held Emma for the first time, I thought about how different things might have been if we hadn't discovered Crystal's lies. Our family might have been torn apart by her deception, and this precious little girl might never have been born. Instead, we were all together, happy and honest and full of love for each other. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things in our lives. Looking back on that difficult time, I learned some important lessons about family and truth and standing up for the people you love. I learned that sometimes you have to be brave and take risks to protect what matters most. I learned that lies might seem powerful, but truth is always stronger in the end. Most importantly, I learned that when a family sticks together and supports each other, they can overcome any challenge that comes their way. Crystal thought she could destroy us with her manipulation and blackmail, but she only made us more grateful for the real love we shared. These days, our house is filled with laughter again. Emma takes her first steps in the same garden where Robert grows his roses. Tommy and Sarah come for dinner every Sunday, and we talk about happy things like Emma's latest accomplishments and plans for family vacations. Robert and I sit on our porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, grateful for every day we have together. Sometimes people ask me if I regret not calling the police on Crystal right away, if I think we should have been harsher with her. But honestly, I'm proud of how we handled the situation. We stopped her from hurting our family without destroying her life completely. We gave her a chance to make things right and she took it. That feels like the right thing to do. In the end, the truth really did set us all free. Free from Crystal's lies, free from fear and suspicion, and free to love each other openly and honestly. My advice to anyone facing a similar situation is this: trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and never let anyone convince you that lies are stronger than love. Family is worth fighting for, and the truth is always worth telling, no matter how much it might hurt at first. So that's my story about the night my daughter-in-law tried to destroy my family with her lies, and how we turned the tables on her with nothing but truth and love. I hope it inspires you to stand up for what's right in your own life. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to deal with someone who tried to manipulate your family? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell me what city you're watching from. Thank you so much for listening to my story until the very end. This is Granny's voice, and I'll see you in the next video.